Hey, it's Mark Henry, author of Dancing with Energy, Healing, Magic, and Mysticism. So the title of this video is The Aftermath of Hurricane Ida and Magical Outcomes. So yes, I am still among the living. The Hurricane Ida did not blow my house down like in the Three Little Pigs. Thank goodness, right? So, kind of going to give you an update about what's been happening and what led up to the storm. If you haven't seen it, I put a video on Patreon that is public, that if you wanted to know what I was planning on doing to prepare for Hurricane Ida. And from an insider's perspective, what it is that typically happens in Louisiana, feel free to go check that out. There's a link in the last video from last week in the description. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So let's get the magic out of the way first. So what happened with that? So as some of y'all know, I have a friend who is a Catholic priest, and he lives about an hour and a half away. So we were talking on the phone, and he said, hey, maybe we can help each other out. He prides himself as being someone who can do like Catholic magic and influence the weather. So he said, why don't we kind of combine our forces, and what I'll do is I will say some prayers to protect your property, you know, your house, your fence, and all that type of stuff. And you can do your thing to keep my electricity on. That's what he was saying. He was concerned about his mother. His mother lives with him, and she's on oxygen, and they really need the electricity to stay on. So I said, okay, I'll do that. So in addition to the work that I was doing for myself, I was doing some work for him. And so what specifically did I do? I did a couple different things. I know on a previous video, I said that sometimes we can get scared and throw everything, all different types of magic into one outcome. So I violated that rule this time just a little bit because it felt like it was necessary in this case. Because Ida was Hurricane Cat 4, verging on a Cat 5. So I needed some power in a few different directions. And I felt confident that that was what was needed in that specific situation. So this was kind of a little bit of an exception to my rule. So what I did was, there is a book that I like, and you can certainly buy this yourself on Amazon. It's a book called Magical Protection by Damon Brand. And there is a working in there to protect your house and property. And I think that it said it's partially for storms and partially for other types of things. We're talking about like burglaries and things. So I did that. In addition, I went and beseeched some of the spirits that I work with, various entities, and I believe that, you know, what we do is the best way to go about it is to develop relationships with spirits over time, so that you give them offerings, show them honor, and they may help you out at certain times because of that relationship. It's the same way that, you know, our friends who we spend time with and help them out, and sometimes they help us out. It's kind of a little bit of a reciprocal type of exchange. I wouldn't recommend going ahead and just, you know, when you need something, call upon a spirit that you haven't worked with before. That wouldn't be the most effective way to go about it. You need to build a relationship, in other words. So I did that, and I petitioned Hecate, and I tried to get in contact with the spirits of the land around me, asked for their assistance. Some of the spirits I've worked with in the past, and went from there. So how did it all work out? My priest friend did not lose electricity, which was amazing. Because there were a lot of people in Louisiana, I think millions, who lost electricity, including myself. So with my property, I had no damage to my roof, no damage to my house, no damage to my fence. And but if you look at what happened to the right and left of me, the neighbor to the right, tree fell on his house. Neighbor to the left, wind blew his fence down. So I was untouched. So I consider that a success. Our electricity went out. I figured that was likely to happen, just because when you're dealing with winds that are, 75, 80, 90 miles an hour, I think it's just going to happen. However, I did a working, once the wind subsided, for my electricity to be restored in a very short period of time. So I got it basically in 2.5 days. My power went back on. When you're looking at the rest of Louisiana, anywhere between a 1 week and 3 weeks. And there's still a lot of people without power, which is unfortunate. So now that we got the magical part out of the way, and I alluded to this in the past video, what does it look like when everything is affected by a hurricane? Well, right now, and I didn't think about this before, otherwise I'd have mentioned it in the Patreon video, is that we are under a boil advisory. It means that you cannot drink the water. You really have to boil the water, the bacteria in it. The water now has a real chemical smell, like maybe high chlorine, because they're just trying to kill a lot of stuff that's in it. The water supply was affected. The water pressure went real low. It could barely worked. A lot of the toilets didn't flush. Electricity, again, the electricity went out. So as I talked about, what happens in that case, especially down here, is people get generators. And the generators will run to power a few things in your house, and that runs on gasoline. So what would you expect? Okay, so you have electricity out, which means a fair amount of the gas stations don't have power. And the ones that do, then you start to people have a run for gasoline, because they're powering their cars, powering their generators. They're coming up with canisters and canisters wanting to fuel these things, the generators, to keep their refrigerator cool, to keep their air conditioner going. So you have people who, and this has been going on for about 5 days now, you have people that are sometimes waiting in line for 2-3 hours for gas. Some people are even or driving up to the pump and staying there and waiting several hours for the next truck to come, because they don't want anybody to take their place. In New Orleans, we just had a shooting where 2 people got into an argument, and over, I think, maybe one cut in front of the other one, the guy shot him as a result of that. So the tensions were high, and now things are starting to slack up a little bit. But when you have people that are trying to get their basic necessities, people get really stressed out. So there's the gasoline, there's the electricity, there's the water. What else? You have people that are forcing people to go to work. I know the state of Louisiana it was so severe that they gave the state workers an entire week off, all last week, so all state government was shut down for a week. And pretty much all the parishes that I know of. And by the way, parish is the same thing as a county. It's just that we follow what's called the Napoleonic Code, and the rest of the country follows the common law type of thing. So everything is named a little bit different, but it's just an area, kind of a jurisdiction. So you have also another thing about the gasoline is that to the east of me, hour, 2 hours, and then south there's New Orleans. You have people coming in from these places that were much harder hit than us, coming into our community and competing for gas, competing for resources. The grocery stores, when they got power, people hurried up and just bought everything. So it's been a problem getting food up until about this morning, pretty much, because there's been a run on food and people coming from other areas an hour and a half away and buying up all the food. And I'm not blaming anybody. People do what they have to do to provide for their family and survive. I'm just trying to explain the dynamics of what's going on. So there is a lot of competition for resources, I guess, is the main point for all of this. Another thing is, okay, so your power goes out, but that means it affects other things. For example, up until yesterday, we only had 25% of our traffic lights working. And the traffic lights are very helpful when you have all this going on. What happens when you go into a intersection where there is no traffic lights, it becomes a four-way stop. Which, if, basically, I mean, I'm sure you're familiar with the four-way stop. You have to keep track of who got to where first in order to know whose turn it is to move, to go into their forward motion. Some people have a hard time tracking that. Some people don't know that rule, even though it's commonly stated. So there's a little bit of risk, more risk of car accidents when that happens. There are people who are used to, especially on major highways, having the right of way mostly and maybe a side street, not the traffic light maybe not allowing them to pass as much because there's more traffic going in the other direction. But when there's a four-way stop, everything is considered equal. So that slows traffic. So what happens is that it also causes traffic to clump up, so it's harder to get on the road and the people are waiting in line. And what is that doing? It's burning in gas. So it's a kind of a little bit of a chaotic situation when these hurricanes happen. And we just have to kind of rely on each other to try to be kind and be patient with each other. Right now there was so much damage that we have people, I know thousands and thousands of people in shelters. We have some of these around town, in Alexandria, and various other places. They have special shelters for people with medical special needs, people who are maybe diabetic, maybe they need dialysis and various other medical needs, and perhaps their nursing home or something was harmed by the storm. But also, you saw like in New Jersey and New York, how that same storm that hit us, after it downgraded the wind, it still had enough power with the rain to flood all those areas. And many of those areas are not used to that. Down here we have some flood mitigating measures because hurricanes have been part of the natural weather pattern for a while. So while we don't like it, we kind of know what to expect. And we have, good ways to track it and all of that. But strong rainstorms, things like that, it's a little bit hard to predict how much rainfall you're going to get. So my heart goes out to the people that were affected, and to some people were drowning in basements and things. So in any case, on that positive note, I hope that you are all having a good weekend. Thanks for those people that were checking on me on Patreon. I appreciate it. And I also appreciate the people who gave me birthday presents so a couple weeks ago. Alright friends, so as always I'm going to put a link in the description if you are interested in signing up for Patreon. One of the reasons why I like Patreon is it's a more intimate type of environment where I can communicate and teach and provide videos and that sort of thing. So if that's something you're interested in, please check it out and sign up. Okay, well, I will talk to you all later. Bye-bye.